こんにちは。私はカイル・ブリンクです。福山市に住んでいます。カナダから来ました。私はヒバゴンの研究をしています。もしあなたがヒバゴンに興味があったり、情報をお持ちだったり、質問等があればメールをください。もちろんプライバシーは守ります。匿名でも OK です。日本語でのメッセージで大丈夫ですので、ご連絡をお待ちしております。よろしくお願いします。
Featured Hibagon Eyewitness number 3. Featured in this newspaper series, Chasing the Phantom Monster of Mount Hiba. Hibagon being the local and only the most recent name, one in a long list of Japanese names given to the Japanese Bigfoot. You've seen this man before in the NNN documentary. This is he, Mr. Shigeru Iori. And his encounter is one of the best known. Here is the original ape clerk emeritus, and forever our ape clerk, Mr. Katsunori Egi, on location, describing it. Here he is again.
すると視界にこちらに向かってくる人影らしきものが入ってきたという。近所に住むおばあさんかと思って声をかけたが、
おいおばあさん言うても返事がねえ。逆子じゃけようわからん。はっと見たら血を取ったりと恐ろしかったり、とにかくびっくりして家飛んで帰って、でもうやれんけんで今度は向こうへこのお家へ行ってかけり込んだ。
We've reviewed the encounter here, but this article adds some very interesting and very thought-provoking details. Mr. Iori was 47 years old, a farmer. He lived in this house, very near Mount Hiba. This is video I took last spring. Mr. Iori's place is up on the right, and that is the cone summit, the Tateeboshi summit of Mount Hiba. You can see that that's a very short, easy walk for someone whose job it is walking up and down mountains all day. Let's let last year's me retell the story. We've come to the top of the western edge, and this is the famous place of the third sighting. We're going to try to walk around behind it and see if we can get a view that will explain it better. But this is it from the road. So 50 years ago, the man who lived in this house went out to look on his field, which is between this and the next house belonging to his cousin. Well, he went out into the field, which we're coming up on right here. He was walking out in the field, and Hibagon came down from that slope, walking straight toward him. Well, he hurried back into his house, locked up, jumped in his car, and drove to his cousin's house to warn him. The cousin said he'd never seen his cousin so afraid in his whole life. Never seen anybody so afraid. That happened right there. And now here's what's newly learned from this article. It was at 8 p.m. Didn't know that. 8 p.m. on July 30th, 1970. Mr. Iori was going out to open the sluice to irrigate his rice paddy. 8 p.m. middle of summer, so it's just beginning to get dark. He first noticed the creature when it was 20 meters, 60 feet away. That's pretty close. Now, at first, he thought it was a person. In fact, he thought it was his sister-in-law, so he paid it no mind. Now, Mr. Iori is on this narrow berm. He's crouched down, and he's working to open the sluice. His sister-in-law, as he thinks, is walking toward him. He can see her in the corner of his eye. And as she comes closer and closer, and she's not moving to the edge of the berm, but coming right down the middle, and he's thinking to himself, Mr. Iori is, would you watch out, woman? Would you watch out? I'm working right here. You're going to walk right over me or knock me into the rice paddy. He was getting a little irritated. Would you watch out there, he said, and he looked up into the face of not his sister-in-law. And you know the rest of the story. But we learn here something that we didn't know before. This was a very, very close. This was a face-to-face encounter. Mr. Iori suspects that the creature was attracted to a peach tree that stood at the back of the property beside the mountain. And there's a quote here. Mr. Iori says, "No one who hasn't seen this thing can know this fear." No one who hasn't seen this thing can know this fear. Well, Mr. Iori, I haven't seen a Hibagon yet. I might have smelled one last Sunday on Castle Mountain. It might have been crawling around my family while I was scouting up the hill. But I might know your fear from my weird, sudden panic at the solar calendar on Mount Hiba last year. I don't know. But I certainly commiserate with you. And your fear was a healthy response. It was healthy. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Mr. Iori, I will reveal to you now, was the uncle of our friend, the prefectural forest manager. And we hope to visit him again soon. That makes Mr. Iori the man who said that his encounter ruined his life, partly from the trauma of meeting the creature. I can imagine that he was afraid to go outside ever again and work his field and his rice paddy, but partly from some of the bullying, mocking, nasty neighbors. So sad. We get the same kind of people here sometimes, and they always remind me of what my pastor said to me. One time he said, "Kyle, we're commanded to love everyone, but there are some people I just don't like." And last year we met Mr. Iori's sister-in-law, quite by chance, as we were hiking all around this Yuki Loop. She was very nice, very friendly with my girls, not at all monstrous. And there is your updated encounter with the Hibagon. An adolescent or child hanging out here, stealing a few peaches, got caught, went home. If we're totally honest, I think many of us have been there. I have. Old Mr. Simpson catching me helping myself to a few of his raspberries. "Leave some for us, Kyle," he'd say, nice and friendly, but boy, I'd be embarrassed. "I'm sorry," I'd say, and I'd go home. But I'd give old Mr. Simpson a pretty wide berth. I wouldn't make like I was going to walk right over him. Okay, I'll play you out with some other shots from last spring's Hiba trip. So peaceful up here. The only sound is a babbling mountain brook and the sound of complaining children.